The first few chords we're going to look at are what I call the caged chords, and that's C, A, G, E, and D. And from that you get the word caged. And regardless of your level, whether you're a really advanced player or you're just beginning, you're always going to come back to using these basic open chord shapes. So let's take a look at C, our first chord here. We're going to use 3 fingers. We're going to start with our first finger on the 2nd string on the 1st fret. That's this note right here. Then you're going to take your 2nd finger and put it on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And then last, your 3rd finger is going on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. So we have all 3 of those notes down. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure that your fingers are arched up on the tip. You don't want to flatten down like this or have your fingers like this, because what's going to happen is you're going to mute other strings. So you need to make sure that each finger stays within its sort of zone of the string. And then you're going to take your pick in your right hand and you're going to strum from the 5th string down like this. Just fall through the strings. And again, you want to make sure that your fingers are up on the tips and you're pushing down nice and strong. So you want to be soft with the right hand, but really, really strong on the left hand, getting those notes nice and clean. You can go down each string and listen for notes. If you hear any kind of muted notes like that, you need to adjust your left hand most likely. Generally, it's one of 2 things. You're either not pushing down hard enough or your fingers aren't up on the tips. So this is our first chord that we're going to use in example 1, C. And what we're going to do is just give a nice steady strum, downstroke strum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. You can tap your foot if you want. 3, 4. So there it is. First chord, C. All right, so the next chord we're going to take a look at is G. And this is going to use all 6 strings. We're going to start with our 2nd finger here on the low string at the 3rd fret. And then our 1st finger here on the 5th string, 2nd fret. And then the next 2 strings are open. So you get... And then finally your 3rd finger and your pinky go on the same fret as your 2nd finger. So those should line up there. 3rd fret, 3rd fret. Again, we're trying to always remind ourselves to play right up on the tips. So let's look at example 3, and we're going to strum along here. So there is C and G, and what you can do is you can now practice switching between them, because as we're going to see when we get into our songs, we are going to need to move between chords, and that's called a chord progression. So here we go from C for 2 bars, and then G for 2 bars. So now we're going to put together those 2 chords in a chord progression. And as you'll see in our tune examples that we're going to look at later, songs contain all their own chords, and so you have to learn to switch between them, and that's called a chord progression. So here we go. We're going to play 2 bars of C, and then we're going to try and switch to G for 2 bars. We're just going to kind of rotate between those. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. And then to G. Back to C. Everything with your right hand should just be on a downstroke. Just nice and light. Again, we're focusing on clarity, having every chord sound as beautiful as we can. Now we're going to end on C. So you want to just work between those two chords, and you want to hold each chord for as long as you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then switch as quickly as you can so you make that transition not 1, 2, 3, 4, G, 2. And you're trying to have all your fingers land at the same time. So there's a great trick for that I use. And this is something that advanced players can use as well as beginners. And the concept is this. Let's say you take a C chord, okay? And a lot of people, when they play this, they build the chord up sort of note by note. And that would look like this. Like, let's say we started with our first finger. 1, 2, 3. They go, okay, here's C. Okay, 1. Okay, I'm ready. And they play that. What I want you to do is I want you to notice which fingers you put down first, and I want you to switch the order. So whatever is your last finger to go down, put that one first. So in our example here, if I went 1, 2, 3, then what I'm going to try and do is go 3, 2, 1. So I'm going backwards. I'm kind of going to that note that's sort of uncomfortable, and I'm going to put that down first, and what you'll notice is that your other fingers just fall into place. Because ideally, again, at the end of the day, you want to have your hand not on the guitar, C, not on the guitar, C. This is actually a really good exercise just for, you know, getting a chord. Like, you know, the first day, the first time that you play this chord, you're kind of like, okay, here, you know, and then maybe 3 minutes later, you're like, okay, I'm ready, 5 minutes later, and then you play it and it sounds like that, you know. So, and then a week later, a couple days later, you're practicing and you're starting to get the notes to come through. And so you want to ideally just have it, you know, any chord, you move from any chord to any chord as quickly as possible. The next chord we're going to look at is A. So there's a lot of different ways that you can finger this A chord, and I'll show you a few right now, all of which are cool. I would recommend you just picking one fingering and then playing that always, and later you can add the other ways of doing it. So here's a great way of playing A. We've got all the notes on the 2nd fret. So starting on the 4th string, we're going to play the 2nd fret, and then the 3rd string, 2nd fret, and then the 2nd string, 2nd fret. So all of those together, and then I'm omitting the low E. I'm just going to play from the 5th string down. And the fingering that I'm using here is 2, 1, 3, okay? 2nd finger, 1st finger, 3rd finger. You can choose that fingering. Some people like to do, 1, 2, 3, which is another option, or 2, 3, 4. That will work as well. And sometimes in rock and roll, we might see in some of our examples later, you just do it with one finger, you know. That sort of sound. But anyways, for our purposes right now, 2nd finger, 1st finger, 3rd finger is a great way to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to have that chord, and then we're going to move to a D. This is going to be in the next example here. And this is going to be the 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and then 2nd fret. 1st finger, 3rd finger, 2nd finger. This just looks like a little triangle, okay? We're going to play from the 4th string down, starting with, if you know your open strings, this would be a D note. All right, so here we go. We're going to play A for a little bit, and then we're going to switch to D. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. This is a great exercise, just kind of staying on a chord, listening to the sound of it. play here for a while. And then we're going to go to D. Again, fingers on the tips. Steady rhythm. 1, 2, back to A. Here we go to D. And then finally home. A. So this brings me to another important point I want to talk about getting a good sound and making sure that you start off playing with the right technique. This metal thing right here and all on your guitar are called frets. We want to play as close to the fret as we can. So let's just say that I take my first finger and I'm playing the first fret here. If I play on the fret, directly on it, I get like a muted sound, okay? If I play too far back here, like close to the nut, away from the fret, it's gonna buzz. Not so hot. So ideally, I want to position my finger right before the fret, and everybody has to find kind of that sweet spot on the tip of on the pad of your finger that's going to give you the best sound. So again, up on the tips and right up close next to the frets. This is really important with chords. What I see all the time is people playing, here's their D chord, and they've done all the work to learn to put their fingers in the right place, but they're not, on the right strings, but not in the right place, meaning in relationship to the fret. So they've got the D, and it's all back here, and it sounds buzzy, and they're like, man, I'm playing the D. Like, what's going on? You gotta constantly check yourself for this. I mean, I've been playing guitar for a lot of years, and it's still something that I just want to think about every time I touch the guitar is, how can I get the best sound from my hands? So work on that as we go through these chords. All right, so the last chord I want to show you out of the caged chords is E. And this is going to use all 6 strings. We're going to start with our second finger on the 2nd fret, and then our 3rd finger goes right underneath it, and then the 1st finger goes on the 1st fret of the 3rd string. So we've got these 3 notes here. It's 2, 2, 1, and then I can play all 6 strings. I can include this low E especially, that's the root note. Sounds great to have that in there. Great rock and roll chord, you know? Big open E, okay? So, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this together with the chord we just learned, A. So we're gonna go from E to A, very typical chord progression in a lot of songs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Two bars on each. Nice quarter note strums. Again, right up close next to the frets. Getting every note clean. So that's E to A.